Welcome back to Unlimited Recaps. Today we'll be diving into a thriller mystery film from 1995 titled Copycat. The film starts with Dr. Helen Hudson lecturing about serial killers in front of a huge crowd. She unexpectedly locks eyes with a man in the crowd who is threatening her during the presentation. After a moment of turning her head away, she glances back and the man is gone. Helen chooses to use the women's restroom following the lecture, and it is there that she is abruptly attacked by the man who she had eye contact with throughout the talk. The man is serial killer Daryl Cullum. Daryl kills the officer with a gunshot, but happily, another officer runs in, saving Helen's life. This terrifying experience causes Helen to become agoraphobia. 13 months later, during a panic attack, she calls her partner, Andy, who is gay, for assistance in finding her prescription. She finds her medication, settles down, and starts talking on her computer while having flashbacks to AOL. In the meantime, a man uses his computer to see a video of a lady running in a park. He pans over to her face and notices that she is grinning uncomfortably. MJ and her partner Ruben are called to a crime scene later that day to conduct an investigation. When MJ investigates the location in search of hints and proof regarding the murder, she discovers that the crime scene has been tampered with and that some evidence has vanished. Because of her agoraphobia, Helen finds it difficult to get the newspaper at her front door at her residence, which makes her think of the 2020 quarantine. She is upset to read in the newspaper that the killer has taken the life of his third girlfriend. In an attempt to shed light on the killings, she speaks with MJ and phones the police, but she is not taken seriously. After learning Helen's identity, MJ and Ruben make the decision to go see her. She rejects their attempts to persuade her to assist them. When MJ shows Helen the pictures of the murder victims, Helen gets scared. When she settles down, they give her the pictures to look at. Helen is reluctant to face her anxieties, but after hearing some encouraging words from Andy, she looks closely at the photos and scrutinizes every aspect with an inquisitive, keen eye. After this dramatic time, she takes a shower to ease her anxiety. But when she's almost done, she discovers something horrifying. Her red dress, which she wore during Daryl's attack, is perfectly folded and lying on her bed, a disturbing reminder that someone has entered her personal space. Helen, disturbed but unflinching, calls Ruben and MJ to report her discoveries. She uses her forensic knowledge to shed light on the recent homicides during their conversation, drawing attention to the startling parallels between these killings and the earlier crimes committed by a renowned serial killer. A week or so later, Helen finds herself idly occupying herself with an online game of chess when she receives a mysterious email from an unknown source. A frightening video that appears to be the killer's next potential victim is hinted at in the email. She phones MJ and Ruben right away to watch the video together after becoming alarmed. They try to save a backup of the file after a heated argument, but it's equipped with a clever self-destruct virus that removes the footage before they can secure it. Helen tries desperately to retrieve the tape, but it's too late. The clue disappears, leaving them without leads and with the terrifying possibility of another victim approaching. Frustration and fear start to creep in. Helen fights with the police because she is so afraid for her own safety and believes the murderer is manipulating her through a devious psychological game. Seeing that she is vulnerable, Ruben chooses to stay with her and offers to protect her. Later that evening, they had a little moment of intimacy, just a soft kiss on her forehead, more of a subtle expression of love than a full-blown passionate gesture. In the meantime, in a scene that doesn't seem connected, a man named Peter gets a call from his significant other inviting him to watch a talk show. Refusing, saying he's busy, he quickly gives her a quick peck on the forehead and leaves. His hasty departure and callous demeanor imply that he is taking advantage of her. The scene takes a sharp turn as he descends into a secret dark cellar. The space is gloomy, with surgical implements arranged carefully next to a twisted gallery full of unsettling images of slain women. This horrific scene revolves around a woman who is bound to a bed and has a clear plastic bag suffocating her head. Even more horrible, Helen recognized this victim as the identical one from the video that was previously shown to her. A fresh victim is discovered the following morning next to a no dumping sign atop a hill. Ruben arrives late and MJ is already on the scene. They look over the scene of the crime and look for hints. MJ pays Helen another visit to talk about her research on the most recent victim. Helen becomes aware of something after hearing Ruben's report on the victim's lab results. She discovers that the suspect is replicating the actions of a previous serial murderer by looking through case files on her computer. A second death is discovered later on close to a petrol station. MJ and Ruben revisit the location to look into it. Helen calls and assists them in tracking down crucial hints. Helen informs MJ that the latest murder is just another example of a serial killer from the past. Then, at a phone booth close to the crime scene, Ruben discovers a note addressed to Helen. He makes the decision to see her in order to ask further questions on the murder case. To send backup to Helen's residence and notify the police securing her there, MJ makes a call to the police station in the meantime. Someone steals into Helen's home when the police officer watching her is elsewhere. Helen makes the decision to look into it, and when she discovers that her guard is down and that someone is intruding, she becomes frightened. Because of her agoraphobia, she tries to leave her residence but is unsuccessful and has another panic episode. She returns inside her home and takes out a knife to defend herself from the trespasser. Luckily, Ruben shows there in time to frighten off the intruder and protect Helen. During a heated discussion with Ruben and MJ, Helen, overcome with feelings of vulnerability and frustration, candidly expresses her serious worries about the police's seeming incapacity to protect her life. Helen, feeling imprisoned in her own house, makes a strong decision to stay there and refuses to allow fear rule her life. As a result of her anguish, the cops decide to strengthen the security at her home by adding more locks and surveillance equipment to give her some level of security. As all is going on, MJ and her team gather at the police headquarters to discuss the most recent developments in the terrifying serial killer case that has the city enthralled. As they examine each hint and piece of evidence in an effort to make a breakthrough, the atmosphere is tense. Following the meeting, the commissioner calls MJ's supervisor away and says he wants to keep Helen out of the investigation because he thinks her presence could impede it. But MJ disobeys her superior's orders because she feels obligated to help Helen and because she cares for her. She chooses to visit Helen and brings with her the important piece of evidence they found in the phone booth earlier, the note. They start to piece together the killer's mental jigsaw by closely examining the note and learning more about his characteristics. Helen looks through some case files later that evening as she gets ready for bed in an attempt to make sense of the pandemonium going on around her. But her time of peace is cut short when she finds insects crawling all over her bed, which makes her fear. She looks about frantically for the infestation's source when she finds a scary book under her bed. A human finger has been used as a bookmark, which horrifies her and serves as a disturbing reminder of the atrocity she has experienced. MJ and her investigation team hurry back to Helen's home to offer assistance and deal with the uncomfortable situation. They put forth a lot of effort to keep her safe, and MJ stops to console and reassure her because he knows how much dread Helen is carrying. Soon later, a detective comes up to them eager to talk about the unsettling finding of the book hidden under Helen's bed. They are shocked to find that the author of the book is Daryl Cullum, the infamous serial killer who had tried to kill Helen 13 months before. In light of these concerning findings, the team determines that it is essential to speak with Daryl via video conference, who is presently behind bars, in order to obtain crucial information that can clarify the current issue and shield Helen from additional danger. MJ starts a conversation with Daryl, but until Helen speaks with him, he won't cooperate. When she says yes, he tells her that the murderer's name is Peter Curtin, which sounds like the name of a previous serial killer. Daryl promises to give Helen's underwear in return for her panties, revealing the location of his friend's meeting with the killer that evening. Who in the world would consent to exchange their undergarments? MJ acts immediately, phoning Ruben to let her know about the lead they've found. Daryl tells Helen that he is death and life for her as MJ departs, carrying on their talk. Subsequently, Andy informs Helen that he is leaving her alone at home to go out with a buddy later that evening. Ruben is taken hostage amid the violence that ensues back at the police station as a ruckus breaks out and people start getting detained. In spite of MJ's attempts to maintain control, the hostage-taker shoots and kills Ruben. Helen's phone rings and goes to voicemail when MJ approaches her to tell her about Ruben's passing. MJ believes that Helen and Ruben may have had a thing. Helen hears a recording of one of her own lectures playing on the other end as the message is being recorded. After hearing Helen's voice in a club, Peter hangs up the phone, pours an unidentified chemical into a drink, and moves toward Andy, Helen's gay friend. The cops track the call via a tap on Helen's phone. Helen then discovers that one of her lectures included a list of previous serial killers, the acts of which the current suspect is imitating, providing them with a hint as to what the killer will likely do next. Though they arrive too late, MJ and the cops sprint to the location identified by the call. Already the assassin has struck and Andy is the victim this time. Andy's body is discovered floating close to the docks the next morning. When Helen returns home, MJ consoles her as she laments Andy's passing. Helen then turns her attention to the murderer's potential next step, stating that it's likely that he's driving a gold VW Bug. MJ gives her squad the instruction to look into the car's owners at the police station. When MJ shows Andy's friend the list of owners of gold VW Bugs, they are able to identify Peter Foley as the murderer. The police launch a high-stakes effort to capture the elusive Peter in a tense and well-planned move. Sadly, their timing is terrible because when they get there, they find that Peter has already left his house. The officers had no idea that they have unintentionally wandered into a carefully constructed trap that Peter himself set. The scenario quickly spirals out of control and results in a disastrous operation failure. In horror, the police watch as Peter's house erupts into flames, a terrible result of the traps he set, signaling not just a loss of property, but also a significant defeat in their attempts to apprehend him. As the report reveals the operation's failure, Helen, who has been nervously following the events on the news, feels a wave of fear sweep over her. The tension in her chest releases when the sound of her doorbell abruptly pierces through her thoughts. 2 police officers are waiting for her outside the door. When she gets closer to it, this should reassure her. She has a terrifying conclusion as she answers the door. One of the cops is none other than Peter. The unsuspecting cop is brutally killed by Peter in front of Helen. She quickly finds herself imprisoned and defenseless against Peter's immense strength. He pins her to the ground after a brief but fierce struggle, and then he strikes her face viciously, sending her reeling. He gives her a powerful medication injection before she has a chance to collect herself, which has the consequence of making her unconscious and determining her fate. After a while, MJ finds Helen's house and is horrified by what she sees when she gets there. There's no mistaking that something nefarious has happened because the police officers stationed outside are lying dead on the ground. Her instincts taking over, she phones for help as soon as she realizes how urgent the situation is and starts looking into the frightening scenario. As soon as she enters the residence, MJ notices a video camera sitting menacingly on a table next to a note ordering her to watch the tape. As soon as she hits play, the terrifying picture of Peter and an unconscious Helen at his mercy flashes on the screen. Peter describes his evil schemes in a deranged monologue, mocking MJ while claiming that she is aware of exactly where they are. He menacingly threatens to take Helen's life if she disobeys his demands for obedience, demanding that she come alone. Helen awakens from unconsciousness in the meantime, a terrifying rush of déjà vu flooding her senses. She soon discovers that her current situation is eerily similar to the terrifying event that occurred 13 months prior when Daryl made an attempt on her life. She is struck with the horrific idea that Peter intends to recreate Daryl's botched murder attempt as a cruel tribute to her traumatic background. Fueled by a desperate attempt to survive, Helen engages Peter in a game of wits by purposefully pushing him to divert his attention while he prepares to carry out his evil plans. Her moves almost manage to knock him off balance for a moment, and she notices the flash of anger in his eyes. But Peter swiftly recovers his composure, a predatory calm enveloping him as he takes back control, resolved to carry out his lethal schemes. Disregarding her superior's orders to wait for assistance, MJ heads straight to Peter's location. As she walks into the building, she discovers Helen in the bathroom, prepared to be hung. She gets ambushed and caught off guard while looking for Peter. Following a brief battle, Peter shoots MJ, but her bulletproof vest keeps her alive. When Helen realizes this, she pretends to hang herself, which makes Peter freak out and chop the wire around Helen's neck. Helen drops to the ground, and she stabs Peter in the leg with shards of glass as he tries to hold her down once again. In a desperate attempt to get away, Helen breaks out of the restroom and sprints to the rooftop. Peter pursues, determined to murder her. Following a brief altercation, Peter tries to stab Helen, but MJ kills him by shooting him in the back. Helen and MJ finally feel relieved that the experience is done. In the final scene of the movie, Daryl Cullum is shown penning a letter to one of his students from behind bars, telling them to keep it simple and assuring them that they will eventually achieve greatness. Happy hunting, he writes at the end of the letter, implying that Helen might be the target of another murderer down the road. As the dust settles on the harrowing confrontation in Copycat 1995, Helen and MJ share a fragile moment of relief, knowing they've triumphed over Peter's twisted game. Helen, finally confronting her fears, steps into the light, her agoraphobia slowly giving way to resilience. Yet, just as hope flickers in their hearts, the unsettling message from Daryl Cullum reverberates, a chilling reminder that darkness lurks in the shadows, waiting to strike again. As the screen fades to black, the tension remains palpable, a haunting testament to the fragility of safety and the relentless pursuit of evil. If so, please remember to subscribe, like, and share it in order to see more fantastic movie recaps. I appreciate you watching.